Spotlight is a production of CTNY, the Catholic Television Network of Youngstown. It seeks to spotlight people, places, and events from around the Diocese of Youngstown that promote the new gospel of joy called for by Pope Francis. Your program host is Father James Corda.
Hello and welcome to Spotlight. I'm Father Jim Corda. Today we're going to talk to Pastor Joe Cameneti, who is from Believers Church. And Pastor Joe, it's such a pleasure to have on the show today.
It's my pleasure to be here, Father.
You know, you're a familiar face on our ecumenical channel to the folks on Sundays and also on Tuesdays, and so I thought this would be a wonderful opportunity for them to get to know you better, and also for us to kind of talk about church and faith and life and those things that really are important for us. And so it's nice that you can be here.
It's wonderful to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Tell the folks that are with us a little bit about yourself, where you went to school. I know you're a native of Howland, so let us know a little bit more.
Sure. I went through parochial school all the way through 11th grade. 11th grade, I had a football knee injury, and I couldn't play football my senior year. I had to pay my own tuition, so I asked my dad if I could transfer to Howland. So I actually, senior year, went to Howland. And then my brother Tony and I were really into bodybuilding, so we opened up the Still Valley Barbell Club in Boardman. I was only 19. Mm-hmm. And at that point I had kind of drifted from God. My parents brought me up well. The Catholic Church taught me well. And then I just had drifted and wasn't going to church or anything like that. And I had a guy come up to the club. His name was Lou, and he was older. To me, he was like almost 40, so that was really old when you're 19. Mm-hmm. And he started talking to me about Jesus, and I made fun of him. He paid me to train him, so I had to be with him 3 times a week, and he just would never stop. And then I would make fun of him, call him a Jesus freak, and those types of things. But after a couple months, my heart opened, and I began to ask him questions. Then one day he asked me to turn on a TV show. It was a Christian show, and I did. Mm-hmm. And at the end, I knelt down and prayed. And I had one of those 180 conversions. I just turned around. I just began to follow God. And actually became involved at Mount Carmel's charismatic group, and was real involved there. And one of my closer priest friends was Father Crumley. Mm-hmm. You know, and when I was... I think I was only in junior high. He looked at me one day and said, "You have a call on your life." Yeah. And I knew it, but I didn't know what to do with it. And I told him back in junior high, I said, "Well, I don't know what I'm going to do because I like girls and I have to be married." Mm-hmm. And he said, "God will show you." Mm-hmm. So then I felt to go into ministry, and then, you know, I decided I want to be married too. So I went to a Bible school, Protestant Bible school, met my wife, and we came back to Warren in 1983 and started Believers Church.
Tell us about Believers Church. How did you get the title and the name for it, and how involved is your wife in that ministry with you?
Sure. You know, I was in Bible school, ready to graduate, and thinking of names, and that name just sounded good. So I picked it. It meant a lot to me, the word believer, and so I picked that name. We actually started this Believers Christian Fellowship, and then we changed it maybe 4 years ago. We just thought it'd be nice to be shorter, so we changed it to Believers Church. My wife, Gina, is she's very involved in church. She does, I think it's 3 connect groups, and so those would be like little Bible studies. Right. And then she also, you know, she's in the lobbies greeting, and she counsels, and she helps people in all kinds of ways.
I'd like to talk a little bit about that whole sense of, you know, welcoming and inviting others into church. You know, I'm a firm believer that we don't force people into church, or we don't force people into faith, but but like Jesus, we love them into the church.
I would agree with that.
You know, and how better would this world be if we would use that virtue a little more in what we do and how we live, and also in how we practice our religion and our faith.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, Jesus said that you and I and every Christian that we're the light of the world, and he said he didn't make us that to hide us in a closet. And then he said, let your light shine. So one of the things I teach our people, because he went on to say, and then they'll see your good works and glorify God. So I let them know, you know, those good works could be the many good things we do and helping the poor and all those things. But it also is just showing the fruit of Christ in our lives.
Right.
And to me, that's the biggest and best testimony. So with our church, like I teach them individually to be that way. And so with our church, we want it to be friendly, really inviting. So, you know, we have 2 main lobbies, and we have greeters out there. We call them host team. And they're smiling and they're saying hi to people. And we have free coffee and tea when people walk in. They can just feel comfortable and at home. One of our core values is no perfect people allowed. And I let them know that you can't be here if you're perfect, myself included. And we just try to make people feel comfortable, that, you know, they can come as they are. And you'll see on the TV show sometimes I'm wearing jeans. And one of our other core values is we're married to the message, not the method. And so as culture changes, we try to keep in our mind, how can we change with culture to make it more relevant for the culture? But I believe even in my messages, to wrap everything in grace. You know, Jesus died for us. He died to make us worthy of God. And we can't work our way to heaven, is, you know, how I'll wrap everything. Teach people responsibility and, you know, doing the right thing. But at the same time, Jesus is the one that saved us, and taking that condemnation off of them. And so that's how we create that friendly, Christ-like atmosphere for people.
We've got about a minute left in our first segment, so we're going to talk a little bit more about some of those things, but we're going to take a quick break in a moment. But I think it's important, I think in all that we do, especially when we talk about religion and faith, to kind of get to the bare essentials, because the bare essentials is basically what our foundation is built on. You know, and,
I would agree.
And our faith, our church is built on Jesus Christ. And so he's really kind of the rock and the base and the foundation of all of who we are as Christians, and how important it is to keep that in mind, because sometimes we tend to, you know, wander off in this way or that direction, and we lose sight at times, and, you know, in getting back to the basics. And I think someone wrote a book once about getting back to the basics, and I just think it's so important to do that. We're going to talk more about that, but we're going to take a quick break. Please stay with us. We'll be right back.
Do you want to know more about God? Connect with Pastor Joe as he shares messages that will impact your life, making the Bible practical for everyone, relevant for today, and doable for this generation. Watch Pastor Joe Sunday mornings at 9 and Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. Pastor Joe, connecting people with God.
My name is Sister Mary Claudina, and I run a home for abandoned children. I want to take care of children who have no parents, because luckily I come from a very loving family. There are 8 of us. And I remember when one of my cousins got sick, and she called my mom and said, "Mom, the doctor has said that I might not have too long to live. Will you please raise my 3 children for me?" I remember we had a meeting at home, and my dad called a meeting, and my mom was explaining to all of us. And my father said, you know, this powerful word, he said, "We already have 8. What is 3 more?" We learn to care for each other, to love each other, to fight among each other, to make up, to forgive, to just to be a family. And I think that's what I learned from home, and I wanted to to share that with children who do not have that love and that opportunity just to know what a family is all about.
Welcome back to Spotlight. We're talking with Pastor Joe from Believers Church. You know, I think one of the areas of ministry that I think is so important in our Christian churches is ministry to families. You know, oftentimes families are struggling in ways that we don't always see or understand. Sometimes we're so caught up in how blessed we are in our own family life that sometimes we're not sensitive to those families that might be hurting. And a lot of them hurt, I think, in a silent way. What do you do for families, and how do you reach out and minister to them?
Sure. Well, in our church services, we have something for every age group. That's one thing that we do. So while mom and dad, especially when your kids are young, you appreciate that break.
Sure.
So mom and dad are sitting in the main service, and then we have infant toddler ministry, and then we have children's ministry. And that's all happening, and those kids are being taught and cared for while service is going on. So that's one of the things we do. But in regards to people hurting, we do what we call connect groups, and that's a real big part of our church, and we offer tons of different types. And so we offer connect groups for the family. Like, for instance, if a family is hurting financially, we have some incredible connect groups for them, and that can help them learn how to manage their money, get out of debt, because that's a big tension in marriages, you know. And then we have several marriage connect groups that we do where mom and dad can come and improve their marriage and enhance their marriage. And right while they're doing that, we have something going on for their kids. We do that on Wednesdays in midweek. So we reach out to them in that way, and then we offer counseling also when people need counseling. And sometimes we have to send them to professionals. We do our best, but that's not what I'm trained to do. And so we'll help as high as we can, and then sometimes we recommend they go to more of a professional for help. But those are some of the different things we do. We really value children, and we really value youth. And I didn't mention we have a really cool student ministry too. They meet midweek on Wednesdays, and they have a service just for them, music for them, and we teach them some principles. But then we connect with them, and we do different studies and groups with them also. So we try to reach every age group.
In your experience, at least in my experience, and whether they're Catholic or Protestant or whatever their denomination, I think many young people, when you talk to them, they would say that they're very spiritual, but they're not very religious. You know, and I think it's important to be spiritual. You know, it's important to have that spark of God within you that you recognize and you live by. Any sense of that kind of being the reality in young people's lives today?
I would agree with you. I think they're hungry. There's something inside them that's very hungry. And then I think, you know, one of the things we try to help them understand is, you know, God created them to be part of a church community. And that's, in order to grow fully, you have to have not just spiritual on your own, but you also want to connect. And that's where a lot of the growth comes, as you connect with a church family, whether Catholic or Protestant, but they need to connect. And because left to their own, without the Bible as their path, they could end up going down the wrong path. You know, something spiritual that maybe isn't the best thing.
Sure. The other thing that I'd like us to talk about is in this day and age when there's so many what I consider complexities in this complex world that kind of come at us from all different sides, it's difficult to really hold on to the faith that we have during those trouble and struggling times. And when we find that other people are experiencing that same thing, it kind of helps to know that people struggle and people of faith struggle. But when we kind of come together and work together and dialogue together, kind of beautiful things happen, I believe. And in your experience, and in your ministries and dialogue, do you come into contact with other faith believers, people that you that might be Catholic or Jewish or even the Muslim community. How do you relate and dialogue with them, and how important is it for us to be ecumenical and to be interfaith?
Yeah, well, I think it's very important. You know, Jesus' disciples came to him and said, that guy over there is telling people about you, but he's not one of us. And Jesus said, if he's not against us, if he's not against me, he's for me. Right. So, you know, to address first just with amongst us Christians, I think it's, you know, I think the walls need to come down, and they are coming down, and we need to respect our differences and know that our foundation, as you said earlier, is built on Christ. Then I also dialogue with my children's pediatrician was a Hindu priest in Trumbull County, and we've had lunch many times over the years, and I show him great respect, and he shows me great respect. He grew up in India, went to a Methodist school. He had probably more scriptures memorized than I did.
Sure.
But, you know, he believed his way, and I believed my way, and we're very open with what we believe, and yet I still believe we can be friendly and kind to each other. We've had Muslims that have come to church and converted over the years. You know, and I don't know many outside of that. Sure. I'd love to know more, but I don't.
Yeah, you know, in my experience, we've got 2 minutes left of our middle segment. In our experience, I think ever since Vatican II in 1965 and 68, that there's been more of an importance of reaching out in a sense of solidarity, and you use that word respect, which I think is fundamental in any kind of ecumenical spirit in dialogue. But when we build bridges, we help each other. If we burn bridges, then we don't help each other, and I believe we do disservice to God. You know, so I think how important it is, and I believe, this may be simplistic or fundamental, but I believe that our world certainly would be a better place if that word respect would be part of just who we are as human beings.
I would agree with that. You know, one of the ministers I like to listen to, his name is Rick Warren, and he's out of Southern California, Orange County. He spoke at a Muslim convention and has gotten a lot of bad press over it from Christians.
Sure.
Evangelical Christians. But in essence, all he strived to do is he said, hey, you know, this amount of people in the world don't have water. What if we work together, try to get them water? And he's been very attacked for that, but yet I think his spirit was right in that. And he's not compromising what he believes. He believes in Jesus, but he's realizing, hey, together there's a lot more that we can do. And I think you're saying something very similar to that.
Exactly. I had a program with some Lutheran brothers and sisters, and we talked about generational poverty. Those are the things that kind of unite us when we do outreach and service. And if we can do it together as Christians, and we're certainly looking at what Jesus called us to do, is that they may be one, and working as one to do that is kind of bringing about the kingdom, I believe.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah. I would agree with you.
We're going to take another break, Pastor Joe, but stay with us. We'll be right back.
Do you want to know more about God? Connect with Pastor Joe as he shares messages that will impact your life. Making the Bible practical for everyone. Relevant for today. And doable for this generation. Watch Pastor Joe Sunday mornings at 9 and Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. Pastor Joe, connecting people with God.
There is a place where a total stranger will give you their blood. There is a place where someone you never knew will save your child from drowning. A place where people from 7 states away will turn up at your door and give you food and shelter after a flood. There's a place where a person who doesn't look like you, talk like you, or dress like you will stretch out their hand and put it across your shoulders and say, everything is going to be okay. That place is called America, where we look out for each other, and it's up to us to keep it that way. When you help the American Red Cross, you help America.
Welcome back to our show. We're talking about Believers Church with Pastor Joe. You know, one of the areas that I think you and I would certainly love to have people really resonate with is using the mass media to get the message of God and Jesus out, and how important it is. You do that in your ministry. We do that in our ministry here. Why is it so important to use the means and the gifts of the mass media to get that message out?
Well, I think if Jesus had it, he would have used it. You know, obviously he didn't. The most powerful way to evangelize is for people to talk to people. But I also think media is obviously incredibly powerful. So we've been doing TV for a long time, and we started out on WFMJ, the NBC affiliate, Youngstown, and then we've been with you guys for quite a time too. And we really appreciate being on your channel too. So it's very important to me, and I know going out into the community how many people see it. I can go in any store anywhere and be stopped 5 or 6 times. So I know it's working. I know people are watching. And we also are trying to keep up with the new media, which would be the internet. And then, you know, we have what we call the Believers Church BC app. So it's for all smartphones and pads, and people can listen to all the messages while they're driving or whatever they're doing, and they can watch them on the website. So I think media is very, very important to bring the message out. And today it's changing so fast. So you have to, now we're doing some digital advertisements, like Facebook and Twitter and some of those things. And for Easter, we advertised at the movie theater. We did commercials right before the movies and that type of thing.
That's wonderful. While we're on the subject, why don't you give the folks that are with us your website and also how they can download the app on their smartphone or iPad?
On any smartphone, they can just put in BC app, and Believers app will come up. They might have to put Warren, Ohio on some of them, but it will come up, and they just download it in their app store. So it can be found in any app store. Our website is believers.cc. And so they just go to believers.cc, and our website will come up. And if they ever want to contact, they can send an email at info@believers.cc. So they can get in touch with us in many different ways.
Good. Let's go back to that whole sense. You had mentioned the word evangelization. You know, oftentimes when we think of Jesus' time and St. Paul and how they evangelized, you know, St. Paul, you know, I picture him being up there on a little pedestal and preaching to the crowds that gathered around the marketplaces or these local Christian communities that he started. But oftentimes when I think of Jesus, he did the same thing, but he also had this one-on-one relationship with people.
He did.
And how, you know, it's wonderful to, you know, to use this great gift that God has given us with the media. It's wonderful to talk in our churches on the weekend to crowds of people. But how important is that one-on-one?
I think it's really important. My favorite time on the weekend is the lobbies. So I'll stand in there before and after services, and I'll usually be there a half hour after a service talking with people. But then I do a lot of coffees with people. I do smaller groups. We call them connect groups. I do a men's disciple group, and it will be 7 weeks long, but I'll hang out with 12 guys for 7 weeks, once a week, and we just, you know, we get to know each other and we evangelize in that one-on-one way. I think that's very important.
Yeah. What, as you look ahead, and you know, I like to look ahead, but I've been known to look too far ahead sometimes, and it's important to kind of be more grounded in the present. But as you do look ahead, what would be some of the hopes or some of the dreams that you have for yourself, for your community, and for the Word of God?
Yeah, well, our vision is we exist to connect a city with God, and that's what I burn. That's what burns inside of me, is to connect people with God and get them to become closer and closer to God. And so that's a dream that will always be there. And I feel we can solve a lot of people's problems if we can connect them with God. I know I know they'll also need some counseling and some other things, some help sometimes. But the peace and the joy, I believe, only comes when you're connected with God. So we exist to do that, and our mission statement is fan, friend, follower, which is easy to remember. And the mission is how you accomplish your vision.
Right.
And so we want to take someone that's anti-God and turn them into a friend. We know it's a process. So wherever they're at, we want to make them a friend. A fan, I mean, where it's like, yay, God, you're cool. And then turn them into a friend where they connect, and then ultimately turn them into a follower. So that's an overall dream. We're doing something here next spring that we're real excited about as a church. We're going to launch a Boardman area campus. So we'll have a second campus. Right now we're in Howland. And we're real excited about that too, and just reaching as many people as we can for Christ.
Sure. Now, will your son be part of that, or will you be part of that? How will that work?
The Boardman campus, I'll probably drive out here and do it live, and then we may have to do some that are video too. But that one I'll try to do live, especially one main service that I do. Kind of go in between services at our church.
Isn't it nice to have the world of media to help us with that from time to time?
Yeah, right now it's a big deal where people are doing that, and it's working for people.
It is. And I think for young people too, I think, as you had mentioned, young people use the social communications and are more comfortable with all of that in more ways than we ever understood or know. Some of the more seasoned people, like our parents or a little younger, might not find it as user friendly, but still it's part of who we are, and it's just important that we utilize those tools. For sure.
I agree. And we talked about our parents earlier. My dad, who's 88, gets on Facebook, and he knows enough just to get on and say hello to people. So, but yeah, that age group has a much more difficult time. My grandchildren can open my phone up and they know right where to go and what apps to play with. And it's amazing.
Well, Pastor Joe, it's such a pleasure to have you on the show today. We thank you for your presence on our ecumenical channel. We wish you well in Believers Church. We know you're doing beautiful things for God, and we thank you for that.
Thank you, Father. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And thank you for being with us. Have a good day, and God be with you.
Spotlight has been a production of CTNY, the Catholic Television Network of Youngstown. Your program host was Father James Corda.